Are you an artist that dreams of painting full-time and making a living from your art, but perhaps you're stuck in a full-time job that's unfulfilling and you're just not getting enough time to paint, and you're just dreaming of being able to paint full-time? Well, this was me many years ago, but with a solid vision and some help along the way, I was able to quit my job and make a full-time living as an artist. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I did that, and also at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some tips that you can implement right now to start taking those first steps towards becoming a full-time artist and living your dream. Now then, let me just give you a bit of a background here. My name's Sam and I'm a landscape artist. I love painting landscapes in oils, it's my passion, and I teach people how to paint, and I'm also an art coach as well. So that's one of the ways I make money from my art. Now this started when I was a child. I always loved drawing and painting, and even back then I always loved landscape art. By the time I got to high school, I was one of the best artists in the class, but at that point, as I was getting towards leaving, the careers advisor said to me that you can't make a living as an artist and it's very difficult. Regardless, I went on to do A-levels. I grew up in England and that's what you do before you go to university, and I did art for A-level, but I actually got a bad mark because all I wanted to really paint was landscapes because that was my thing, but they were trying to get me to do other things like abstract art and things like that. Nothing against it or anything, but it just wasn't my thing. So by the time I left college, which is where I did my A-levels in England, we go to college before we go to university, I'd kind of had enough of art then. I was completely put off and I thought I'd better go and study something that's going to get me a proper job. So I went and studied plant sciences because I also had an interest in plants ever since I was a child. And then after that, I got a job in Kew Gardens in London. Now, it was a pretty cool place to work, but the job itself was not very exciting. And at that time, having not painted for a long time, I took up painting again after seeing the botanical artists in Kew. It was really inspiring. I also stumbled across a seascape painter after seeing his paintings in a gallery in Exeter. And that just lit me up right away. I was just like, wow, I want to learn how to paint the sea. So I started painting the sea. I was painting with acrylics, and then I got into oils. Now I was painting for about a year and a half, 2 years in my mid-20s. And then my job contract at Kew came to an end, and don't ask me how, but I got a job in the United States working for a tree company. So I was working as an arborist in training. I then did a tree surgery course back in England and moved back to London and was climbing trees with a chainsaw doing tree surgery. Now, after about a year of living in London, I was feeling pretty stressed and I decided to take up painting again and resumed my love of painting the sea, which is what I'd started with. And then 3 months later, I moved to New Zealand where I live now. I managed to get a job pretty quickly and I immediately started painting again. Now, as I carried on working, I carried on painting outside of work, and I was really getting into more landscape painting, especially in New Zealand, as the landscape is so inspiring. After that, I decided to stay in New Zealand. I moved to a place called Wellington and was working for a tree company there. And I got my first art studio, so I was painting there after work. And then in the end, I realised, you know what, I can't keep climbing trees forever, and I got offered a job in Auckland with a tree consultancy firm doing arboriculture consultancy. Now this was a pretty corporate job, and I thought, well, this is the career path that I need to go in, and you know, I can work my way up the corporate ladder here and perhaps one day get a job with the council doing tree stuff. Anyway, this job was really unfulfilling. I wasn't enjoying it. It was stressful. It was long hours. There was a lot of weekend work as well. And all the time I could think was, I just want to paint. I just want to be a full-time artist. I'd have days where I'd go into work thinking, when I leave work tonight, I'm going to go straight to my studio and paint, and I'm just going to spend the evening painting. And then work would finish. I'd finish around 4 o'clock. I'd get across to my studio, which was only about a 10-minute walk away from where I worked. And I'd get there, and then suddenly I'd sit down and I'd be like, oh man, I'm so tired, and I'd be practically falling asleep, and then I just wouldn't get any painting done. And it was just frustrating because I had many evenings like this where I wanted to paint, and then by the time I actually sat in front of my easel, I just felt too tired to do so. And then I thought, you know, something's got to change. Now by this point it was the year 2014 and I was miserable in my job. My life was just a bit unfulfilling, out of control. I was going out drinking every weekend and just wasting my life. It just felt like I was wasting my life basically. With my corporate job as an arboriculture consultant, on paper I looked really successful, but as I said, inside I was absolutely miserable. Now in 2014, this is when everything started to change for me, because in the beginning of the year I just felt really out of balance and like there's something wrong with the world and I couldn't put my finger on it. I then read a book by a guy called Eckhart Tolle. It was called A New Earth, and it just blew my mind open just to all these new concepts, and it was like a weight had been taken off me. I suddenly wasn't taking everything so seriously anymore, and especially not my job, but instead was thinking about how can I make this dream of mine of becoming a full-time artist a reality. Now at this point I knew I needed some help because my painting, as far as I'm concerned, wasn't up to standard, and it really wasn't. I was struggling with my compositions, my understanding of tonal values, the lights and darks in the landscape. My colour mixing was terrible. I couldn't get the colour harmony in my paintings. And even though I was selling some artworks in a gallery, it still wasn't up to standard. Now what I did was I started reaching out to some artists to try and get some help, but no one would help me. But then there was one artist that I reached out to who did help me, and his name was Andrew Tischler. I first saw his work on Pinterest and thought it was just absolutely amazing, and I reached out to him and he was willing to help me. Andrew and I were emailing for a while, and then at the beginning of 2015 we spoke on Skype and talked about art, and by the end of the call he said, look, next year at the start of 2016 I'm running 2 plein air painting art tours in the south of New Zealand, and would you like to help me run them? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to. And from that moment, the next day I went into work really happy because I knew I was going to quit my job and go and be an artist instead. I knew that this was what I was meant to be doing. Now at this point I spoke to my boss about my intentions, and actually he was pretty cool and he let me go part-time. So I was just working for the company for just 3 days a week. Now, although the money was a bit tighter, I was still able to live on it, but those 2 extra days allowed me to start working more on my painting. I also said to Andrew, look, if we're going to work together, perhaps I should meet you. He was living in Melbourne in Australia at the time. So I flew out to Melbourne and I stayed with him for 2 weeks, and he really helped me with my painting. He showed me exactly where I was going wrong. Turns out I should have been doing pencil sketches to design my compositions, something I wasn't doing before. And he showed me his process for painting. He explained about colour theory, tonal values, the lights and darks in the landscapes, and just all sorts of things about painting. Also introduced me to a load of historical painters that I'd never even heard of. It was just really inspiring, and in that 2 weeks my painting really took off. You could see a marked improvement from my artwork prior to meeting Andrew and then to afterwards, after getting some mentoring from Andrew. So I'm still eternally grateful to him. But that's what really set everything in motion afterwards. I then really set the intention of I'm going to become a full-time artist. Now the following year, when I helped him with the plein air painting tours, these were in the South Island of New Zealand, so that's when I actually officially quit my career job in Auckland, because it was my intention that after the art tours I was going to stay in Queenstown. And Queenstown is a really beautiful place. It's right in the mountains. It's known as the adventure capital of the world, and it's a fantastic place to be a landscape artist. And I just wanted to spend some time being amongst my subject of painting mountains and rugged landscapes, and just spend some time working on my craft, getting my painting up to standard. So whilst in Queenstown I was able to find an art studio, and I started just picking up part-time work here and there to just keep me afloat, keep me going. So if I was running low on money, I'd pick up some work, quite often on a temporary basis, and anything that I could do to just carry on fueling my artistic dreams and just keep the paintbrushes in my hand, and more importantly just keep working on my painting techniques so I could improve my artwork. It was in around 2017 that I then started this YouTube channel and started making painting tutorial videos teaching people the painting techniques that I had learned from Andrew, because I could suddenly see all the problems that many artists were experiencing, because I had the same problems. Then fast forward another couple of years, I moved up to the far north of New Zealand, and this is where I started to make my first saleable painting tutorial videos, which I was selling from my website as digital downloads. And I also created a Patreon as well. So for a few years after that, I was making videos on Patreon and selling painting tutorial videos from my website. I was also still selling art online and through the gallery I was selling through in Wellington. So I was making enough money to get by, but there were certainly many months where it was still a struggle. But regardless, I was still happy that I was able to paint every day. Now last year, everything really changed for me because I moved over to the platform school.com and I created an art school there. And then a few months later created a free painting community which you can join. I've put the link in the description box below. There's loads of free painting tutorials on there. And from then on, I really started to focus on coaching artists, helping them to get their painting up to a standard so that they can start selling their artworks. And that's how I make a living from my art. That's how I've quit my job. I haven't worked for anybody else in years. So I've made a living through teaching my painting skills. There's actually many ways you can make a living as an artist. You don't have to do it through selling original paintings. I think it's best to have multiple sources of income. I sell paintings from my website, I sell in a gallery, I coach artists, I make YouTube videos, I have a blog, I have some affiliate links, so I've got multiple sources of income that have allowed me to make a living as an artist. Now don't get me wrong, the journey has not been easy by any means. I've had many times where I've been really struggling for money. Sometimes I've thought, am I going to have to quit and get another job? But then the thought of going back to my old lifestyle, no way, man. So I just keep working at it. You've got to work hard and you've seriously got to want it to be a full-time artist. So what's my key takeaway from my story here? Well, first of all, it's never too late to pursue your passion. So start today, start right now, taking those steps to become a full-time artist. The next thing is be willing to take risks and make sacrifices. What I did was I was able to go part-time with my job so I could spend more time painting and work towards my artistic goals. I in the end took my chances and quit my job and moved to Queenstown in the South Island of New Zealand and just picked up work as and when I needed it, but I was amongst my subject, which was painting mountains, and I was spending that time working on my craft. And it was also in that time I also set my YouTube channel up as well. So I was taking all these steps to get to where I am today. Keep learning and improving your art. Just keep working on your craft and making sure that every painting or drawing that you do is better than the last one. And then that brings me on to the fourth thing. Get a mentor. Sometimes it really helps to have an art mentor, someone that can really help you with your painting, show you a few techniques. This is going to accelerate your painting process and get you nearer to that goal of becoming a full-time artist. You might also need some help with the business side of things. Now, I got an art mentor and it really helped me. My artwork improved very quickly. And art mentoring is something that I offer myself. So if you're struggling with your landscape paintings especially, but also if you're in any aspect of realism art, perhaps you're struggling with compositions, tonal values, colour mixing, and you're having trouble painting the pictures that you'd imagine, then I can help you with that. I can also help you with getting an online presence with your art so you can start selling your first paintings. Now, if that interests you and you would like some help, then talk to me or my head coach. I've put a link in the description box below. You can book a call with either one of us and we can find out what your artistic goals are and what help you need, and we'll see if we can help you. So as I say, the link's in the description box below. Now the last thing, and this is also one of the most important things, is never give up. Just keep going. Even when it feels like everything's hopeless and you're never going to reach your dream. That's usually often when the breakthroughs happen. So keep going with your painting, keep working on improving and never give up. And if you don't give up, you can't fail. So I hope you enjoyed this video and you found it useful. If you'd like to learn more about improving your landscape painting techniques, then check out this video on 3 things that transformed my landscape painting skills. I'll see you in the next video.